You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community. We invite you to be a part of it. Head to the writingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello Chris, Hooley, it's Friday. It's been a blinking long week. I'm so happy to be here chatting to you wonderful people again. How are you doing, Chris?
Yeah, I'm very good, and I've heard on the grapevine that it's somebody's birthday today.
It may be. Yes, I am indeed another year older today. Thanks.
Oh, that could be a fun thing. Guess how old Agate is, and we'll reveal it at the end of the show.
Yeah, we can do that. I'm sure I might be okay with that. Brandon says my guess is 3.
Yeah, I mean, he does act like a 3-year-old, so maybe.
It's quite possible. He says also, how many different types of glassware do we think Agate will have today? It's become quite a feature. So I'm not going to say.
I think that's the answer for the glassware, not your age.
Oh, okay. that makes a lot of sense. So if you'd like to guess how many glasses I will use tonight, please put them in the chat. And if one of you gets it right, I will give you a shout out on Twitter from the show's account. How about that? But anyway, how's your week been, Chris?
Yeah, it's strange because Friday the 13th doing a show and having a fantastic horror author on the show as well it's like sending me all sorts of different vibes.
Yeah, I was actually born on Friday the 13th, which makes a lot of sense to some people. Plus, it's Friday the 13th today on my birthday. But if you remember back to last year on my birthday, it was one of my favorite episodes ever. I got to interview Max Brooks, who you know is one of my favorite authors. Author of World War Z, or Z as he called it, which is incredible. And we haven't had many horror authors on in the show, so it's great that it's my birthday again, and we've got another horror author on. And I don't think that was premeditated, Chris, was it?
I mean, it was to a certain extent, not the birthday thing, but the horror author thing. We definitely need to rectify that because there's so many good horror authors out there, and we've had a couple. But we still not scratched the surface. And I think there's a lot of genres that we've not branched out into, even though we've done 240 shows. I reckon a good 50-60% of them are crime authors.
They certainly are.
So I think just expand our horizons a little bit, venture out into different genres. And, tonight we've got a fantastic horror author as well to kick us off for the new year. Obviously, we've had one show before this, but, great show with a horror author to start us off. If you're going to have horror authors on, then tonight's guest is definitely one that is on the top of your list when you're booking those guests. Definitely. So, yeah, I'm delighted that she's going to be here with us.
It is great, and I can't wait for this. But there's also a lot of other news in the show this week, Chris. We dropped the first episode, or should I say you dropped the first episode of Beers, and Books on YouTube, which has gone down a treat. People loved it. And I previous to this show starting, I just recorded the beer review for week number 2, and you've got a book coming up this week as well.
I have. I'm enjoying the book that I'm reading at the moment. It's called 10 Years. It's a romantic comedy, so again branching out into different genres. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. So I'm looking forward to reviewing it at the weekend. The beer element, I had to hand that over to you, the baton over to you, because I've been tested this week for celiac, so I can't be drinking a load of beer because that might not agree with me. But if that happens, obviously we chatted about what we could do for the format because I literally committed online to 52 beer reviews.
Yeah, it's kind of a really badly timed thing, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, so I thought, could we do the BBC where we do beards, books and cider because you're allowed cider with celiac, but it didn't have the same ring to it. And then I thought, I know a man who loves a beer. And could review this for me. So it'll be a combination of the two of us for the 52 weeks. But the beard element, this is week 2 of the beard. And I've got my beard comb ready for when it gets longer.
Nice. You need like a horse brush because they work wonders. I would go with you. I would go sod it. But there's so many greys, and There is a correct guess in the chat, actually. So many greys in there that I can't do it anymore. No, unless
Embrace the grey.
Unless I diet, but absolutely not. But also, there was one more bit of news that was a great thing for us this week, Chris. A massive milestone for us that we kind of saw and we talked about quite a while ago, and we just didn't see it coming as quickly as it did. That kind of sounds silly, but like it was there, it was a target. We were busy with other stuff, and suddenly, bang! Within 2 weeks, it's happened. Our YouTube channel has hit 1,000 subscribers. And that for us is amazing. As we started out as a podcast, we didn't really expect to have a YouTube channel and to do live shows at all. So when that developed, it was amazing. And now we're many shows into this. The community is building very nicely for us. You guys are amazing and your support is incredible. And we've hit 1,000 subscribers, Chris. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's never been in the forefront of my mind in terms of subscribers and how many people watch the show, because I think if it was, I would panic a little bit over these interviews. But, you know, it's great. It's great the fact that people are subscribing and finding the show, and, you know, long may it continue.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for doing that and helping us get there, guys. There's lots to come, as you saw with Chris's beers and books. That is episode 2. Expect that this weekend. We've got a few more movie reviews that's just come out. I dropped a review today for A Man Called Otto. Very good film. Check that out on the webpage. And we're going to get some interesting series out for you guys this year. Me and Chris are up to some interesting things, so please check that out. But Chris, enough waffle. Should we get tonight's guest on?
Yeah, definitely. As I said before, she's one of the most exciting horror writers around at the moment. If you haven't read her work, you definitely need to rectify that and put her on your to-be-read list for 2023. She's got a brand new novel coming out called Such Sharp Teeth, which I think is due to come out in the UK very soon. I'm sure we'll talk about release days with that. Obviously, one of her novels is up here as well, which has got a fantastic cover, and obviously I can't wait to talk to her about her different cover designs and how much of an input she has with them. So yeah, can't wait to get her on and have a little chat with her. Ladies and gentlemen, Rachel Harrison.
Hello, Rachel.
Hello, how are you?
We are fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing, Rachel?
I'm good. It feels like we're like 2 weeks into this year, and I'm like, that's it. Doesn't it feel like this 2 weeks has been a whole year?
It has. Like Christmas was like right upon us, and New Year, and suddenly it seems a long time ago already, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. And just before we came on, we were having a good chat, and just before we started the show, we had to stop that chat. But we were talking about your amazing candle holders behind you. Can you tell everybody about your candles?
So the candle holders I liked because they're like very pointy and look like murder weapons, and then the actual candles themselves were a Christmas gift from my husband, and they're skeletons, and they're kind of making the Macaulay Culkin Home Alone face. And if you were to light them, they bleed. But I like them too much. I'm not going to melt them.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's like
That's
it's
a great
classy but scary.
Yeah, I love that. That's brilliant. Brandon says instantly, "Oh my God, I love her." There you go. So, Rachel, where are you coming from in the world right now?
So I live in Western New York, outside of Rochester. So snowy corner of the state.
Is it cold and snowy there right now?
Yeah, actually, it hasn't been very snowy, which is strange for the area, but it did snow today. So it's all like pretty and like the trees are covered, and it hasn't turned to slush yet. So, very cold.
Yeah, of course. What would you say that the best thing about living in New York is?
The best part about living up here is probably the peace and quiet. I lived in Brooklyn for years. So coming up here, it's just like peaceful. And I kind of like that there's not that much going on. And then like my quiet life here where I'll be like, oh, look, a truck. And like the most exciting part of my day will be like watching a mail truck go down the street, where I used to live in New York City, where there was like a million things happening all the time. So
I love the idea of somebody coming in from your house and just being, it's freezing outside, I'm going to light the candles for a bit of warmth, and then just bleeding, and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? Just panicking.
It's like a scene from The Shining.
Yeah. Like, what have I done? Rachel, your candles are bleeding.
I had to have like because I like my morbid style, but my office is like right when you walk into the house. And so my husband was kind of like, well, we can't have, like, I really want like a skeleton, like a big model skeleton. He's like, maybe just at Halloween. It's like a real back and forth.
Oh, that'd be great as well. Just put the skeleton on your desk when you write in, and then people are walking past and they just look in and go, "Oh my God!"
You can kind of see from the street. Yeah. So if they walked in and saw,
that'd be brilliant. So obviously we're in your office. So tell us a little bit about your writing routine then. So obviously you're not sat there to the point where you become a skeleton and people are looking in. But what's it like on a day-to-day basis for you?
So when I used to work full-time, I had a full-time 9 to 5. I worked at a bank. I would get up very early and write at like between like 4:30 and 5, and then right before I left for work, because I'm sharpest in the morning. And right now all I'm doing is writing, but I still find that I'm really sharp when I get up early. So I will try and get up like around 5:30, come down, make myself coffee. I like to start when like it's kind of still dark and still quiet, and I will write up until around 9:30, 10, and then I'll go for a walk, clear my head, have lunch, and then go back to it, and then write till the end of the day. Usually go for another walk. I have a real exciting life. Watching trucks and going for walks. But yeah, I kind of structure it. I try and keep it. I'm like very much a creature of habit. I need my routine. So it's pretty much the same thing every day.
We were talking about this in the week, actually, about kind of writing habits and how we utilize walking as a time for breaking that down and reflecting on the work that you've done. Is that what you use it for? Is it just a time for you to get away from the writing?
Both. I think more often it's for me to get away from it. But I think sometimes when you step away, that's when something will click. Yeah. So usually if I'm stepping, like if I'm like, I'm going to go for a walk, I'm not in the middle of figuring something out, because I'm pretty type A, and I will like stay at my desk until I think I've fixed it as much as possible. And then if I leave at some point and like take my mind off of it, that's when whatever's like really like troubling me will click, and then I'll run back. But I think it is important to step away, especially for me. I can't, if I'm struggling with something, the longer I sit in it, the more panicked and in my head I'll get about it. So I do think writing or any kind of biking, whatever physical activity, just trying to get away from your desk, or even to just read something else or watch something else, stepping away, I think is often one of the most useful tools.
It definitely is.
So Rachel, take us back to that moment then where you're not attempted to write a book yet. You're working in a bank. You're thinking, I'm going to get up tomorrow and I'm going to get up early and I'm going to try and write this manuscript. Like, how did that sort of first month go about? Like, because some people might say, people might have done it at the start of this year, for example, gone, do you know what, this year I'm getting up, I'm going to write this novel. And we get a lot of people that watch this show that, want to be authors, are writing on a regular basis. And they might be in the situation now, a week in or so, where they think, wow, this is a big thing that I committed to. Like, how did you navigate those waters?
I think to just really lean into the enjoyment of it. I think when you start to see it as more of a chore than something that you love is when it becomes hard. And just to create the habit. Like, creating the habit is the hardest part. Like, this is 2 weeks into the year, any New Year's resolution you make, this is when it's the challenge, because like, I don't know how, there's like a number of weeks they say it takes to form a habit, but until you get there, it's sucks. Like, you don't want to do it. Maybe the first few times you're like, yeah, I'm getting up and writing. And then, you hit 2 weeks in and you're like, I would love to hit snooze.
Yeah. I
But
suppose.
yeah, go ahead.
I suppose it's like that whole the concept of the gym goers, that up to December it's quite quiet, and then January hits, and then you get an influx of new people trying to commit to the gym, and within a few weeks they're peeling off. So if that's the case with the writers as well, as you said, Chris, it is more than likely people do that, and that they might have that fatigue quite early on. What advice could you give them at that stage when they're undecided whether to continue on with the journey that they've just started or give it up?
I think to be patient with themselves and to not hold themselves to too high a standard. I think, even if it's too hard, if they're like, every day I'm going to write 1,000 words, well, that might not be sustainable for you. Like, maybe you need to just get up and write one good sentence, or not even. Maybe you write something and you're like, I didn't like it, and you delete it all, and then you go about your day, but you still did it. And so to not beat yourself up about, or even to like write a bunch of words and get them down on the paper and be like, oh, those are bad. You can always go back and edit them, but if they don't exist, you can't edit what doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
So I think to not be too strict with yourself, or have this idea of what success looks like, that, because I was just as much of a writer as when I was working at the bank as I am now.
Yeah.
Still the same. I still have to get up and motivate myself to do it. So I think some people get in their heads about like, well, I want to get to this point, or, it's not good enough, or, things like that. And to just kind of get back to your love of it and not be too hard on yourself. If you get up and write a sentence every day, you're still a writer. And to just be proud of yourself and all that.
Rachel, before we got to the bank stage and you starting to write your first novel, what was the inspiration for you to do that in the first place?
So I'd always written. I was a creative kid, and I went to Emerson College, which is in Boston. And I started as a marketing major, and I was like writing a screenplay for fun. And I was kind of like, why am I a marketing major? And so I switched to screenwriting. And so I studied screenwriting in college. And I wanted to be like a development executive. So like I would read scripts and then work with screenwriters and develop projects. And after I graduated, I couldn't find a job doing that. So I was working in TV production in New York City. I was like working on TV game shows, Newlywed Game, things like that. Nothing glamorous, like setting up the craft service table and long days and all that stuff. And from there, I ended up getting a job in publishing. I worked in publishing contracts. And around that time, I started to write prose instead of screenplays. It seemed like that path to publication seemed more achievable than me trying to go back the Hollywood route. And it took me a while to kind of transition my screenwriting writer brain to writing prose and focusing on like writing good sentences and translating my ideas and things like that. And I was writing a lot of like short stories during that time. And then I felt like, well, maybe I can't write a novel. Maybe I can only write stories. And then I was just like, well, let's see. And so I wrote drafts of 2 not great like novels that I was just practice, I guess. And then while I was at I guess I worked at JP Morgan Chase. While I was at the bank, that's when I was like, okay, I had the idea for The Return, which is my first novel, and I wrote the draft. So that's the like, of course, like I feel like most writers, their story is like, and then I did this, and then I was here, and it's usually not like a straight line. It's
Yeah, no,
convoluted
definitely.
how they get to where they are.
Yeah, we find that a lot on the show. Obviously, with every writer that we speak to, everyone has different journeys, and that's why it's so great for us to chat to them. But what attracted you to horror in terms of, I think I'd love to write horror.
Because it's the best.
Yeah, I'd love to write horror, but it does intimidate me at the same time because I think I've seen so many iconic, I've read so many iconic horror novels, and I feel like a lot of ideas have kind of been done. And for me personally, I would be doing maybe I've not branched out enough, but I would probably be doing something that's an amalgamation of, a Stephen King type thing mixed with James Herbert, or, all my reading knowledge would kind of go into that book, and I'd finish it and I'd go, oh, I've just written this again. I've just written Cujo, but with a wolf or something. So what attracted you to it, and how did you put your own unique spin on it? They're my two questions.
So I think I like describe my relationship with horror as like a rom-com, like where it's like the childhood friend who like you move back to your hometown and you realize you were meant to be together all along. I'm I'm very sensitive, and I am a fraidy cat. And so growing up, any interaction I had with anything scary deeply affected me. And so I avoided it for a long time because it made me like, it stuck with me too much. And like night lights and sleeping with my covers just so like my nose and mouth were a bit like I could breathe. But when I got to college, my roommate, my suite mate, super into horror, and she would like sit us down and make us watch The Ring, and sit us down and make us watch the Kubrick Shining and the TV like miniseries Shining. And so she was really into it. And then I was part of a screenwriting club, and they did a contest, and the contest was a horror writing contest. And I wanted to participate. So that's the first thing that I wrote that was in the genre. And I was like, there's a lot of conflict here. I don't need to like work to create conflict. I can explore things through the monster, or explore things through whatever's scary. And, fear is such a powerful emotion. It just seemed like very natural to me. So that was and then I won that contest. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'm good at this. Then it took me a while to find my way back to it. I think I still didn't realize like that, like I was still afraid of things. Like I'd be watching these horror movies and I would still be like, but when I started writing short fiction again in my mid-20s, that's when I like returned to the genre and really immersed myself in it, and embraced it a little bit more. And I think what's so great about horror is there's just like a wide range in the genre, and it's a great way to explore things through like a different avenue. So, like you were saying, like, well, I'd be afraid about doing like Stephen King. My first novel, The Return, I pitched it as like The Shining, but about female friendship. So you can kind of take these, like, because The Shining is just a haunted house book, so you could say that's been done before. It's Hill House done differently. But I think there's always ways to like take a very specific experience and explore it through like vampirism, like, or for Such Sharp Teeth, it's a book about body autonomy, and but it's explored through being a werewolf. So I think that's what's cool about horror. It's not just blood and guts. I mean, the blood and guts is great, I love it, but it's really an avenue to explore life and fear.
Yeah.
Chris, it's really interesting what you mentioned there about writing. In any genre, you're going to come up against something that pretty much has been written before. So it's interesting on people's perception on how you tackle that as a writer. And I've spoken about this openly recently, there's the things I've written recently have very closely been matched to other things as well. So how do you feel, Chris, you can answer this as well, or Rachel, either of you, how do you feel for someone who wants to write in any genre that may feel they're not able to create something genuine, as in newly genuine, and it may be kind of out there already?
Well, I think that's why I asked the question, because I found myself in that predicament multiple times. Because I did an MA, and for my MA I had to pick a genre to write in, and I picked crime because I thought, oh, I love crime, I love reading crime. And then when I sat down to write a crime story, the amount of times I deleted the manuscript because I was like, it's too close to this, it's too close to that, this character's just like this one. And it really irritated me. So I couldn't find my own, I think because so many people had done it better than me, I found it really difficult to then put my own spin on something, because, I think you forget things when you read them and you think, oh, this is a great idea. And then you write it down and you think, God, that was from a book I read about 5 years ago that I forgot that happened in it.
So how did you tackle that, and how do you deal with it as for someone who might be watching that is in that position? What would your advice be there for them to move forward?
I think I actually spoke to somebody about that. I think it was Stephen J. Gold, actually, and he just said, just make it authentic to you. And he said, when you write what you know, in terms of bringing your own experience to a genre, that will make it more unique to you. So like the detective that I had ended up taking on different traits that were close to my own personal life that I feel like hadn't been explored so much before. So I think that's how I sort of tried to navigate it, by, putting more of me into the story, I suppose.
Amazing. Yeah, great. How do you feel about that, Rachel? Have you faced that kind of issue before?
I think that's finding your own voice and, your own perspective is the perfect way to combat that. And also to try not to get so much in your head and think negatively, because even if you're putting stuff down on the page and you're like, oh, that's from that thing, as long as you clock it in the drafting process, you can always go back and look at it and say, well, this I might have, taken from this one thing that I read, but this is fresh and this is new and this came out through the drafting process. So I don't think any writing is ever, useless. Anything you put down on paper is leading you to the next thing. And yeah, I've definitely had moments. I think every writer's horror story is when you get to something and you're like, oh shit, did I read that somewhere else? Or so I think, but try not to get to be diligent about that, but not to get stuck in the fear. You don't want to let if you're too afraid of this isn't original, if everybody felt that way, no original ideas would ever come out again.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
You just kind of have to shoot your shot and do your due diligence, and Yeah,
I love that. That's great advice. I wish I would have had that advice about 6 months ago.
So Rachel, you go from the point where you're working in the bank and you start writing the return, and that gets published, and you get a great feedback from that, and in fact it wins some awards as well. How did you feel about that? Did you feel like it was a great validation for your work and your efforts? And then did it propel you forward to your next novel, or did it kind of put pressure on your next novel that you had to live up to that standard?
So the return, I'm very proud of that book, but I wasn't sufficiently prepared to publish a book. I think I was so just excited that I'd written it and that there was movement in my writing career. I hadn't prepared myself to be like, oh, people are going to read this and the kind of public opinion. And I think it was a little tricky when it came out because I didn't have Instagram before it came out and I wasn't super online, and to get tagged in reviews, and most of them are nice, but every once in a while you'll get tagged in a review. and it'll be like, "Whoop," and I'm very sensitive. So I remember a few months before The Return came out, I met with Sean Hamill, who's a brilliant horror writer. He wrote A Cosmology of Monsters. Highly recommend it if you're looking for more authors to get on your show. And he told me, like, oh, have you looked at Goodreads? And I was like, no, I'm not looking at Goodreads. And then I did, and it ruined me for like a month.
Goodreads is a brutal place to go.
Now I don't look at
Yeah.
it. But it's weird with The Return because I think I had this perception that like readers didn't really connect with readers. I think it was a little bit tricky because like it was about like on the jacket, it's like a missing girl. And so I think, and some people like it was in the thriller section in some stores. And to me, it's a horror novel. It's not a thriller. And I think some people thought it would be like a Gone Girl or a Girl on the Train. And that's not what it is. And so it took a while for it to find its readership. And it was luckily it was very well reviewed. It was reviewed in the New York Times, and it was nominated for a Stoker Award. But to me, it took a while for it to find people who were like, oh, like, I love this book, and to really find its readership. But luckily I'd already written the draft of Cackle before The Return came out. Otherwise, I think I would have been too in my head about like how people react to my work. So that's the challenge in general.
I was going to say, did that play on your mind when you said you had the draft for Cackle already done, but when you got nominated for the Stoker Award and you were finding that success with The Return, did that impact you in any way in terms of your approach to writing after you'd had those accolades in that respect?
No, I think I'm like any positive feedback I get, it's like I take it in and it makes me feel great, but like it doesn't affect, like I could get 10 positive comments and one like negative comment or one negative thought from myself will erase all of that. So I don't think any amount of like praise or perceived success on the outside is going to fix how you feel about
I think a lot of us can relate to that, because it can be the case that you've got multiple 5-star, 4-star reviews and you skim across them, you take them in, but they just bounce off you. And is that 1-star review, if it's there, you will just indulge in that 1-star review. And that's all you can think about. And I don't know why we do it as authors. It's because we love and care for our work. And it's a difficult thing. If you are starting out your writing journey, expect it. It will happen. And we've seen some crazy reviews on this show. Possibly Tina Baker. Someone got a really bad 1-star review because the book turned up damaged through an Amazon delivery. And that was the 1-star review on their book. I can't believe that was there, but it was. So you'll have the 1-star reviews and it will play on your mind. But you've got to believe that those people that are putting the positives in there have done that for a good reason. So it's hard to do, but yeah.
I think it just, at the end of the day, you have to be proud of your book. You have to be proud of what you've written, because any outside noise, you just can't pay attention to it at all. I think to an extent, good stuff too, because everyone's going to like something different, I remember when Cackle came out, somebody being like, well, I didn't like and I don't seek out reviews anymore. I get tagged in them. Will be like, well, I didn't like The Return, but I loved Cackle. And it's like, I wrote both of them. So you can't keep in mind like how to please anybody but but yourself. You just have to make sure whatever you're writing, you feel good about and you're excited about and proud of. Otherwise, any outside feedback you get is going to be worse.
Yeah, no, definitely. That makes a whole host of sense for a lot of people. And I think, a lot of people that watch the show Appreciate that advice, definitely. So a bit more advice. Obviously, you're our first horror writer of the year. So what tips would you, if you had to narrow it down to 3 tips to write in horror, what would those tips be?
Oh gosh. That's a good question. I think to think about what you want to write about first in terms of like theme or subject matter. Like for The Return, I wanted to write about female friendship. And so that's what the book was about. It wasn't about the creepy hotel or the monster. That's what it was about. And then I think the second thing you want to think about is what monster or setting or horror aspect do you want to complement that theme or, you know, whatever you subject matter. And then I think the third thing you want to think about is dread. Dread is, I mean, this might be obviously any answer I'm going to be is going to be my personal opinion, but I love dread. Like dread is my favorite kind of horror topping. So horror seasoning.
Well, how do you write dread? Because some people have said that this generation is getting harder and harder to scare because, you know, they're almost seeing more shocking things in films and things like that. And, you know, there's a lot of emphasis on the jump scare in films. But how do you get that across in a book?
I think you need to know where it's going and then to hold back on, like, to work backwards from what you know is going to happen in the end and to kind of think about how you want to pace that out and how you want to tease out. Like, I think actually our generation is younger generations are pretty easy to scare because we all have a lot of anxiety. And so if you want to exploit the anxiety, something bad is going to happen. You know, something bad is going to happen. And just to add these little reminders, something bad is going to happen. Something bad is going to happen. And then get kind of louder and louder. And then something bad is happening.
This is why in work recently, I showed a lot of younger people the Alien film, this 1979 Alien film. And they were amazed by that film. And it is because of that reason exactly, that it is tension and tension built upon tension, aiming towards something bad happening. But it's built in such a way that you know it's coming, but you can't do anything about it. And it just draws you in and pulls you in. And I think that is a great explanation of how to do that. And it's something that was made in this late 70s. It's incredible that it still stands up today. What are your kind of inspirations for horror, Rachel?
It's funny you bring up Alien because that's one of the first movies I ever saw when my mom showed it to me when I was very young. Alien and Jaws I saw way too young.
Oh, well, we found out on this show that the pitch for Alien was Jaws in space. Yeah. Literally, that was it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
One of you is afraid of E.T.
Yeah, that's me.
E.T. is very scary.
Yes, Rachel, thank you. It is. The bit where he's dying in the bath is terrifying as a kid. And the garage scene or the outhouse or whatever you want to refer to it as, if you found an alien now as an adult, I'm sorry, but you would be terrified.
Yeah. The whole creature design for E.T. is a big no for me. The movie is very charming, but I can't look at E.T.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because obviously you've got your blood burning candles and everything, and obviously into horror, but E.T. is too much for some people.
Way too much. I'd rather hang out with Freddy than E.T.
Yeah, me too. Definitely.
But yeah, but again, I was I was easily scared as a kid, so E.T. freaked me.
But you could watch Jaws and Alien, but E.T. freaked you out.
Yeah, do you know what?
Well, I was scared by Jaws and Alien. I wasn't okay with it.
Yeah, but E.T. I think for me was more scary because it opened up the prospect of space and the fact that there was no, but in a way that I actually understood as a
Okay,
child.
because space came to the Earth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I started asking questions. Well, what about space? And then obviously I was asking my mum, and she's not like a scientist or anything like that. So she's like, just
Making up
read the book
stats.
or look at this. And I was like, do you know how many stars there are in the galaxy? There's
I hate
billions.
space.
And they were
I
like,
hate
"What?"
space.
Yeah,
That's so I hate it. I hate thinking about it.
But do you know what's scarier than space is our oceans that we haven't yet discovered properly.
Yeah, I hate the ocean too.
Wow. I like the
wanna
ocean,
think about them.
but just the top bit.
Yeah, I
I mean,
like to
this.
look at it,
Yeah.
but I don't
and
want
there's
to
some
think
creepy
about
stuff
it.
in the ocean too, man. There's some really scary stuff. Like that.
Yeah. How I
Ross
got into
says-
horror is basically I'm afraid of everything. So.
Ross says, yeah, but that's great because you can utilize that fear
Oh,
for
yeah.
your writing, of course. Ross in the chat says Pennywise scares him, which is a common thing, I believe.
Yeah, clowns, the phobia of clowns. Yeah.
Pennywise, yeah, it was another one. I remember I was at a garage sale with my mom and they had the book. And so on the car, like on the car ride on the way home, I asked her about it. She gave me like the funny clip notes, which I remember to this day. She was like, yeah, there's like a clown, but he's actually like an alien and he's in the plumbing and he kills people through the plumbing. And then it turns out he's like a big spider and they throw rocks at him and kill him. And for me, my big takeaway as like a small child was that there's a monster in the plumbing.
Yeah.
So I'd be washing my hands like this. I'd be in the shower.
That was like a Freddy scene at one stage, I'm sure.
Yeah.
In the bath.
In the bath with the...
Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Do you know what freaked me out when I was young? The only film that kind of got to me a little bit was Event Horizon, which I think is a fantastic horror.
I haven't seen that in forever.
It's on Netflix now. It's definitely
is it?
worth watching. Yes, I watched it recently. Still great. So there's a couple of comments in the chat there about horror. And Brandon said, I watched Alien for the first time in August this year. Let us know, Brandon, what you thought about that as a film that was released in '79. How do you feel that it holds up to today's standards? Because that often shocks people. And Rachel, we're 42 minutes in. This is going by way too quickly. Can you please let everybody know what Cackle is all about?
The latest one is
I'm
not
a bit
Cackle, mate.
rusty on Cackle.
Chris, take over because I clearly messed that up then.
Yeah. So Cackle is obviously in Rachel's back catalogue, but Such Sharp Teeth is probably the book that she would like to talk about at this moment in time. But you can tell us about both.
They're
Sure,
great books, of course.
So Cackle is about Annie, who is just turning 30 and having a bit of a life crisis. She was just dumped by her longtime boyfriend, and she moves to a very picturesque small town and befriends a mysterious woman who is beautiful and seemingly ageless. And the rest of the town seems pretty afraid of this woman, but she takes a special interest in Annie, and Annie is kind of so desperate for validation, they form a friendship. And it becomes pretty clear as time goes on that this woman, Sophie, may be a witch. But the question is she a good witch or a bad witch? And I would say it's probably the lightest. If you scare easily, Cackle is probably a good place to start in my catalog. And then Such Sharp Teeth is about Rory, who moves back to her hometown to be with her pregnant twin sister, and she reunites with an old high school friend who always had a crush on her, but she kind of kept at arm's length. But now that they're grown up, she thinks maybe something could happen. And she's kind of thinking about that after she runs into him and is driving home, and bang, she hits something with her car. And when she gets out to investigate, she's attacked and bitten. And it turns out she was attacked and bitten by a werewolf. And now she is a werewolf and has to navigate her past and these new relationships while dealing with her new status as a bloodthirsty monster. So You said before, you were like, she'll tell us when it comes out. And I was like, oh shit, I don't know.
Yeah.
It comes
I
out
did
from
see.
Titan Books in the spring.
Mm,
Such Sharp Teeth does. Cackle's already out, also from
I'm
Titan.
sure. I'm sure on Amazon I saw something. Or sorry, your website, which is fantastic. It looks amazing, by the way. That something was out in December of this year.
December was Bad Dolls, which is a collection, a short story
Right.
collection, 4 stories. It's available in audio and ebook from Berkeley, but Titan is releasing it in as a like physical book in the UK. And that's 4 short stories, speculative fiction. First one's about a woman, an indecisive woman who finds a real magic 8 ball. The second one is about the worst bachelorette weekend you could ever imagine. The third one is about a dieting app that you download it and you get a little goblin who like knocks food out of your hands and is violent and mean.
I
It's
need that
like
app.
my most Black Mirror
Hmm.
episode
I-
thing that I've ever written.
I'm going to share the screen of your website because it's fantastic, and it was
thank you.
Black Sheep is what I was talking about.
Oh, Black Sheep is out in September.
Yeah, 20. Yeah, so towards the end. But there's Such Sharp Teeth is a fantastic cover, by the way. Love that.
The UK cover is really, really cool too.
Okay, which do you prefer?
I love them both. I honestly,
answer.
Diplomatic answer there.
Yeah, definitely.
I do
Good
though.
answer.
It's truthful. That's Bad Dolls. That's the stories.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I
I feel like I used to get mad at my mom when she would be like, call me my sibling's name. And she'd be like, Joseph, Juliet, Rachel. But now with my books, I'm the same way. I'm just like, I don't know. One of them.
I love that as well. Return looks fantastic. Some great quotes all the way through for your books as well. And you mentioned earlier you're now on TikTok as well, and Twitter and Instagram, as you can see at the bottom. So that's where people can find you on social media, right?
Yes.
Good stuff.
Brilliant. So obviously we've got about 13 minutes left of the show. So we're going to get into some of the staple questions because we have a few of those. So the first one is, if you could change the ending to any novel or TV or film, we can open it up. What would you change the ending to and why?
So I'm not going to do a novel because I feel like it would be traitorous to other authors. But I think the end of Fleabag season 2, even though it's a perfect ending, it like broke me. And I'm a hopeless romantic, and I'm like, I want Fleabag and the hot priest to be together. So that's probably what I would change.
Like it. That's a good answer.
Yeah, it was a good answer. So you want to, as a horror author, you want to change a sad ending to a happy ending.
Oh yeah.
Seems a bit backwards to me.
Well,
Kill them all.
Throw out or something will happen.
I think
Okay.
horror can have happy endings. My horror books have happy endings, I think. Even if they're bittersweet, I think they're happy. So.
They do. Actually, there's a question I want to ask just before we do move on. That was based on a review of your book, of Cackle, which was not your latest book. But that review was, this is such a sweet, wonderful, and delightful book. It's a great story about finding yourself and having the courage to make yourself happy with a little bit of magic thrown in. So I'd like to know, how do you balance or make the balance between writing magical stories with realism and self-journey thrown in?
I think the way you balance anything, I think, as a writer is just to use your intuition and kind of write what you enjoy. And yeah, I think it just really has to come down to your own intuition when it comes to balance of anything in your life. And the two things, like whatever my subject matter is in my book and whatever the supernatural element is, they need to complement each other.
Yeah.
So they always need to be in conversation. And I think thinking of it that way helps it kind of balance itself naturally. That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So our second staple question is, if you could take any character and make them your own, and put them in a novel, put them in a short story, which character would you choose and why?
So I think I would go Theodora from Hill House, Shirley Jackson, The Haunting of Hill House. One, because she's a great character, and two, because I think I get her, and like I could see her in one of my stories.
Yeah.
I think she would, like, I could kind of understand the voice of the character and be able to, like, some characters I love, but I'm like, I don't know if I get them, if that makes sense. But I feel like with Theodora, I get it. Maybe that, again, that feels very like, I get exactly what Shirley Jackson was doing, but I just click with that character and think
Yeah, that's great. I mean, some people just say they'd write Harry Potter for the money or something. So that was a great answer.
It's a great series as well.
Yeah, definitely. And the third and final question that we've got, that's one of our staples, is a bit of a morbid question, but I hope you don't mind.
Right up my alley.
Yeah. So you're on your deathbed,
okay,
and you're looking back at your writing career. What does success look like to you? What would you be happy with?
Just having to have done it. I think something that I've learned, and I think I wish I knew sooner, was these kind of tent poles that you think of when you're writing early on. But they don't feel how you think they're going to feel. Like any external success or validation is never going to feel the way it does to finish a draft, or like read back something you wrote and go, oh yeah, like I like that. That's good. No outside compliment is ever going to make you feel the way that you make yourself feel. So I think just to have continued to do it would make me happy.
I love that. I think that's my favorite answer to that question we've had. No external validation, just take it all from yourself. Well, that is a great message. I love it.
You're right there, Chris, because that was the best answer that was in relation to doing the craft, if that makes sense. And just being a writer as the basics as they can get. Great question. Okay, we're going to play a little video, Chris, because you'll nag me if I don't. And we're going to get some questions from the community, guys. So if you do have a question for Rachel, for Chris Hooley, for myself, or for us collectively, please send them in right now, and we'll be back just after this tiny little video. Okie dokie. So we do have one or two, so I will start asking questions. And Rachel, these get a bit random at times, but go with it. It's fine. So Ross says, is there anything...
Sorry, go on. There's multiple questions by Ross. I've just seen one of them, but yeah, go on.
Is there anything that you're scared of that you won't write because it scares the crap out of you too much? Clown skin GTFO out of my books, says Ross. Thank you for your question.
So I was on, I don't know if you know the podcast Talking Scared. It's really great. Neil asks at the end of every episode, the host, what truly scares you? It was my second time on the podcast. I didn't want to answer anything too heavy, so I confessed that I have a phobia of garden gnomes.
Wow.
Was met with some interest, and I'm sure at some point someone's going to show up somewhere that I am with a garden gnome to test this. But then I was talking to Nat Cassidy, who's another brilliant horror writer. He wrote Mary, An Awakening of Terror. Brilliant, brilliant book. And Nat was talking about how his wife collects like gnomes, and they're in the house, and like, and then at first I was like, he was like, and then he started kind of like brainstorming ideas of like a gnome horror book. And I was like, no, like I couldn't ever write it. And then the idea was so good, and we were chatting back and forth, that I was like, we should co-write a gnome book. So I doubt it will ever. I'm not hopeful it will ever happen. We're both very busy. But at first I was like, I would never ever. It would freak me out too much. And then I came around on the idea. Whether I could actually like execute is still to be seen.
Yeah,
But
I mean, if you were to write that, then you two must get together and write a ET book. I mean, come on.
No, someone commented actually in the chat that we should write a novel where ET actually eats people and then wears their skin. And that was
it is because he looks like he wears a lot of skin.
Yeah, he does. And that's terrifying.
There's the answer. I wouldn't write that.
No, whilst eating gnomes.
Yeah, no. E.T. and the Army of Gnomes. Yeah, that's a book I would not write.
I might
write around with his finger just making gnomes come to life.
That's brilliant. I love that idea. I'm writing that for you guys. Yes, that's happening. Oh, what a story! I love that. Oh, good God. Is it the next Chris Hooley question from Ross? Is what you were looking at?
Yeah.
He says, question for Hooley: has he broken all of his fingers and lost the ability to type? In reference to the story that is well overdue that you mentioned in this week's Space Chat, Chris.
Yeah, I did, and I'm trying, Ross. I'm trying, but the words aren't coming. I wish I'd have known you were scared of clowns because I'd have written a clown story quite easily. But yeah, I've sent you a chunk of it, so the rest is on its way.
There you go, chat. Do you have any bits of advice for someone that is struggling to get the creativity juices flowing? The words on the page. What advice could you give Chris Hooley to help him get Ross's story into him, because he's weeks overdue? Rachel, any advice on that?
I think to write something else.
Ooh.
And then come back. You need to to write, like at the end of the day, write like what you did that day, to just get words on the page. Because I think sometimes staring at like a blank like Word doc or whatever can really like fuck you up, and you just be like, you get in your head about it. So if you just start writing whatever, or to just sit down and be like, I have the worst writer's block ever, like I hate my life, this was the worst day, whatever, to just get something on paper, because there's whatever the block is. Once you get it out,
I'll tell you what the block is. I know the block. The block is the fact that I know that some amazing authors are involved in this anthology. And I'm thinking every time I read my own work, I'm like, that's not good enough. Because I've read some of the other stories and I know they're really good. And I'm just like, that's going to look rubbish in comparison. I feel like the kid that goes to play football and his mum's bought him one boot and he's already at a disadvantage. And, he's actually forgot his shorts, so he's got to wear his underpants or something. Like, that's how I feel that everybody else.
If you get something if you write a shitty draft, put it aside for a week and don't think about it, when you come back to it, you can make it better. Yeah,
that's what I'll do, Rachel. I will write.
Don't tell him that, because he's already 2 weeks over.
Another week now. Ross, I'm sorry. Rachel Harrison has given me advice. I'm going to write a shitty draft by the weekend. I'm going to leave it for a week, and then I'll go back to it, and then I'll send it you. Okay? So
better late than never.
Yeah. Yes, Rachel. I agree. Thank you.
Sorry, Ross. You have like this tight deadline, and I'm just like, he'll get it to you in next week.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. We got one more question, and that's from Anya, and then we will wrap this up because we were running out of time rapidly. And she says, thank you for your question, Anya, of course. What 3 items would you take to survive a vampire apocalypse?
I am not surviving any apocalypse. I'd be like, I don't have my contact solution. I need to I don't want to drink water. I want to drink Gatorade. How come we don't have any? I'm very, I wish I was, if I was not, if I'm like picturing like a version of myself who was much better, like a steak, a bunch of garlic.
Yep.
And
Robert Pattinson.
Yeah. And then our
using his bait, just
with his shimmery skin.
I do think though Gatorade probably in an apocalypse would outlive water. Perhaps.
Yeah, I feel like you'd have to go out to the store to like get some.
Mm.
And I don't know if I'd be like, I'm too scared to go out. I think any of like I watch these like how has The Walking Dead been on that long? Like if it were me, I'd just be like, I give up. Like they're so miserable for so long. I don't know. I watched that stuff and I'm just like,
They must be British.
I could not cut it. They're running, they're sweaty. I just I don't I'm not
Isn't it the thing with vampires though that they actually like merge within the community and they like look like people, and is that the thing? I'm not really a vampire fan, to be honest.
Maybe I could convince the vampire to turn me and then I would be on that side. That maybe.
So okay, let's not trust Rachel when it comes to the big takeover of the apocalypse. Yeah.
Yeah.
She will jump ship, no questions asked.
That's my survival instinct, is to just be like,
join the winning team.
Join them, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Me. They're easy as long as I have my Gatorade, my blood supply.
Yeah.
Just give me some blood, I'll be over there.
The Gatorade.
I was meant to do this. My candles bleed.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so we've hit the hour, Rachel. Where can people find all of your brilliant work and more about yourself?
So the place where everything is all together would be my website, rachel-harrison.com. I'm on Twitter at RachFaceLogic. I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Rachel Harrison's Ghost. Come say hi. Yeah, I'm around.
I love that your Instagram is called Rachel Harrison's Ghost.
Yeah, that's the handle that I created like after I was like, okay, I'm a horror author. My Twitter handle is like,
you have to like pre-program, like when you die. I know, again, this is morbid, but just program some posts like for like the year after you die. Just let it go.
I need to put that in my will.
Yeah, somebody has to. In order to get this money, you have to do this, and you have to manage my social media account.
To be honest, in the future, where we are right now, that could be probably holographic and weirdly accurate.
I'll download my brain into a computer, and it'll continue to post content for me.
Yeah,
you can be like a new AI person who just does that.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Next horror novel.
Yeah.
AI ghosts.
So, Rachel, as we kind of mentioned where the next stories are coming out, and of course you can find that on the website. You can find the links, guys, if you're watching this or listening back, thank you. And you can find all that information in the link to the show, whether it's the podcast or the YouTube channel. Just pop down in the description and you will find the links there. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting us over the past few weeks, because obviously it's been Christmas. We hope you have a great time in New Year. We spoke about that, but thank you for getting us to 1,000 subscribers. That's been a massive milestone for us. We're very, very happy about that. And bigger and better things are coming. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And Rachel, before you go, just to embarrass Agatha, how old do you think he is today?
34.
Oh,
I knew I liked you, Rachel.
We'll go with that. We'll go with 34.
We'll let
him have that on his birthday. But yeah,
happy 34th birthday.
Thank you, Rachel. Ross was correct in the chat, but I won't tell you what the age is. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and see you next week.
Have a great weekend. Look out for Chris's beards and books video that's out this weekend, and look after yourselves. We'll see you very soon. Ta-da, guys.
Bye.